It's well known that Deltarune and Undertale are acronyms of each other, but I found another word they're both acronyms of. A word that can change everything. They're both acronyms of the word unaltered. I knew this for a while. The alternate spellings of these 9 letters were a big meme in the Chapter 1 days, but it's only now that I started to consider that this may be another intentional detail. Unaltered. Now, I've been under the interpretation that the prophecy itself is not a bad thing. It's incomplete, there's a lot of double meaning speak involved, and it's out of order. The pictures we see Chapter 4 depict the knight's interpretation of events, not literal events that have to happen. It's easy to misinterpret. So let's say Unaltered is the original prophecy, whatever story that may be. Unaltered was written by Toby Fox, the creator of the universe, who's not really a god, just a little goofball who wanted to make some characters. Now let's say Gaster. He's this individual who knows big pieces of the prophecy. He doesn't know the whole thing, no one does. But let's say he knows the pieces. He wants something very specific to happen, so what he does is he reorganizes the prophecy into Deltarune. I've long believed we are not supposed to break the prophecy, so much as we're supposed to write a new story on top of it. That could include reorganizing the prophecy ourselves, using double meanings to our advantage, but it definitely includes writing some new pieces on top of that. I think it's a hard rule in Deltarune that each individual prophecy needs to be fulfilled by the end of the game. What we're fighting is not the prophecy, but Gaster's Deltarune, his story, his interpretation. His story ends in a way the characters do not like. This is why the words we see in the Chapter 4 Dark World are in his font, and why he says my Deltarune at the end of Chapter 4 before fading into the blue color of it. I feel like Chapter 5 added some evidence that the pieces of the prophecy were out of order, such to the point that every single word might be out of order, like the organic speaking pattern suggests. In Chapter 5, we see Asgore's conspiracy board notes make it into the Dark World, but they're jumbled up and made illegible. So the creation of a Dark World can shift the pieces of words found in the Light World in a different order. So Gaster's trying to get some outcome out of his Deltarune, his experiment. But he's like a conch shell. He repeats the song of the sea, but he only ever repeats what he's heard. He doesn't realize how much free space there is to write a story here everyone's gonna like. He just sticks to what he knows. So let's say the answer to this dilemma, where pieces of unaltered have been lost to time, and the original meaning seems to have been lost, what should we do? Not try to find out what the original unaltered was, rather, we need to take the pieces we have now, add some new ones, and write our own story. Perhaps Undertale? We are not going to find a match between every event of Undertale's story and Deltarune's prophecy panels. We don't get a pointy-headed character saying toothpaste boy. However, we do have a pointy-headed monster kid. This seems like the type of insult he'd call one of his friends when we're not looking. So when it comes to like small joke prophecies like that, I'm probably not going to find like exact matches in Undertale. Instead, I want to take the big prophecies of Deltarune and compare them to Undertale's story. We can ignore pictures all we want. Caddy says the prophecy doesn't have pictures, so they're probably not important. And remember, these don't have to be fulfilled exactly, or even fulfilled at a time we can witness them. As long as everything kind of sort of fits, it fulfills the prophecy. Especially if it's Susie writing this new story. That just fits her character, if not everything fits perfectly, but it still fits kind of. The prophecy which whispers among shadows. There's a prophecy in Undertale as well, not too hard to figure out. The legend of this world, Deltarune. Interestingly, Deltarune here is in brackets. Maybe this signifies every single letter might be jumbled up in this panel. with like the sort of arrow brackets. Maybe it represents that, we want to take a closer look at that word Deltarune. Maybe the word that's supposed to be there is not Deltarune. Deltarune is just reorganization of the word that should be there. A world basked in purest light, the surface, beneath it grew eternal night. Now, this could be an exaggeration of what the underground is. However, the process of making Dark World seems to be a functional part of the Undertale universe. Probably the creation that Gaster from Undertale fell into. If fountains freed, the roaring cries, and titans shape from darkened eyes. Now, this is a conditional. It begins with if. Even so, Titan doesn't necessarily have to mean Gigademon, like it does in Deltarune. A Titan could be a powerful warrior, like Asgore or Night Knight. Asgore and Night Knight both darken their eyes at one point. Asgore has an attack for it, and Night Knight goes to sleep a lot. The light and dark both burning dire, a countdown to the Earth's expire. Honestly, if Dark Worlds exist in Undertale, there is a risk of this happening when we're not watching, but it could represent the war between humans and monsters in general. The people who live in the surface and the people who live underground in the darkness, right? The people who live in the light and the people who live in the dark. But lo, on hopes and dreams they send 3 heroes at the world's end. Now, there are actually more than 3 heroes in Undertale. And that fits, actually. There are 3, but there are more than 3. And also, these 3 heroes don't necessarily need to be part of the same team. I think the prophecy of the heroes is the big ones I'm going to hinge this theory on. The Prince alone in Deepest Dark. Asriel is our token prince of Undertale, but he is a hero. Yes, actually. He crossed the barrier to get human souls to shatter the barrier, but the humans were afraid and attacked. He held back Chara's wrath. That was pretty heroic as well. And then he died on the flower beds trying to get home. Asriel was a hero, and still would be, according to the prophecy, because he was at one point, even if he does become like a villain later on. He's always someone you're going to see towards the end of the game. You're always going to see Flowey towards the end of the game. Either he's going to absorb the human souls and fight you as a Mega Flowey, or they're just going to skip the fight entirely, or he's going to turn into Asriel, or in the genocide route, you're just going to kill Flowey. The cage with human soul imparts. Frisk, it's easy. Literally any of the humans can qualify for this, but we'll just go with Frisk. At last was the girl, and last was the girl. I don't know if last has anything to do with this, but there are multiple female characters in Undertale. This can refer to basically any of them. And last does not have to mean the end of the story. It could mean the end of a chapter. Undyne and Toriel are both chapter bosses. And then the girl with hope crossed on her heart, obviously Undyne, no doubt. She is powered by the hopes and dreams of all monsters. She is a hero who wants to save the underground from the caves they've been imprisoned in. They'll hear the ring of heaven's call. You get a cell phone in Undertale, and you get to call the monsters whenever you want. Most endings end with a mandatory call from Sans, a call between Sans and a heaven dweller, Frisk. The pacifist ending ends with Frisk still having this phone, and most likely using it to call their friends plenty of times in the New World. Genocide is the one I'm skeptical about, because this is the one where you don't get the phone. This is the one where it's hard to tie this to anything. But it could represent Asgore calling everyone to the barrier to escape. A call to leave for heaven, the surface. They'll see the tail of hell take crawl. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Flowery Stems counts as a tail. He's the big demon of the game. However, it could also represent the number of monsters with tails in this game. I'm going to talk about Lemon Bread, who actively says, "Welcome to my special hell." Lemon Bread does have a little tail. Lemon Bread still exists in every ending. It's just that Alphys saw it take Crawl instead of the player. The knight which makes with black and knife. All royal guards are knights, as well as knight. They make bullet patterns, and it's possible they make these bullet patterns from their blades. Undyne is a knight who fashions her own spears. Shall duel with heroes strife by strife. There are plenty of fights in Undertale. Frisk, Undyne, and Flowey all fought people at some point in the game. The Queen's chariot cannot be stopped. Now, this is the one where I can't really tie this to anything. This is not exactly clear what this is referring to. Toriel's probably the queen, and she doesn't necessarily have a chariot, but she does win Nose Nuzzling Championship. Maybe it's the case that no one can stop Toriel in the Nose Nuzzling Championship. Maybe her chariot is her nose. I don't know. The Lord of Screens cleaved red by blade. This one's a very tricky one. Metaton feels like a perfect fit for Lord of Screens, but it seems like he's only cleaved red in the genocide route. However, cleaved red could mean a lot of things. Red is part of his color scheme. It's possible his transformation involves cleaving the rectangle. So you put a cleave in the rectangle and then the full body comes out. I don't know where the blade comes in. Maybe a blade was used to make his parts. But I also want to suggest that Alphys could be the Lord of Screens because of her monitors. And this is a little dark, but she does seem like the type of person prone to cutting herself. If that's the case, we know damn well why we didn't get to see this one. But it is something that could be inferred, you know. The Flower Man trapped in Asylum. Flowey felt trapped at one point, didn't he? But Asgore could still be the Flower Man, and everyone is trapped underground. Everyone is trapped in Asylum. A conundrum's tone. Honestly, this might just represent diegetic music. It might represent the piano puzzle that you can use to get into the room with the artifact. The tone still exists. It's just you don't necessarily need to do it. The hammer and snow ones are unused. They have debatable canonicity. Roots. Shit, yeah, there were roots. There's a flower. Gallery. Shit, yeah, there's a gallery. There's a photo album in Sans' house. Love finds its way to the girl. Love can be any type of love, really, and people love Undyne. Monster Kid loves Undyne, and she has tons of fans. Alphys loves Undyne romantically, and Frisk levels of violences her in the genocide and neutral routes. We don't know the final prophecy, so we can't tie it to Undertale yet. Saving and loading is a huge part of the game, though. And, you know, to save the worlds, there's only one way. Everyone must go away. I don't know. We don't know the final prophecy, so we can't really tie that to Undertale yet. So we'll just see what the final prophecy is and see if we can't, put that in Undertale somewhere. So that only leaves the angel banished will finally meet with its desire. Now let's say banishment is falling into the underground. Now, interestingly enough, it seems people climb Mount Ebot on purpose, to get lost on purpose. The player loads up the game to see what it's about, a desire. The player wants to see what Undertale is, right? Chara climbed the mountain, presumably to kill themselves, but their real desire was a family that loved them. That's what Chara found, a desire they didn't know they had. Frisk finds some desire of theirs in the underground. They smile no matter what route you play. It takes a while for Asgore to meet with any desire of his, whether that be the human winning so he doesn't have to fight for his people anymore, getting a split second of happiness at hearing Frisk say they want to be a family, getting as many monsters across the barrier as possible in the genocide route, or even just the joy he felt with Chara as his child. For Asriel, he met Chara, that was nice. In the neutral route, he absorbs those souls he wanted. In the pacifist route, he does as well as all the monster souls. And genocide route was him choosing to help his old friend Kara traverse the underground easier. Now, not all of that was pretty. I don't think the prophecy has to be fulfilled in a super literal, very clean sense. It just has to be fulfilled. My main point is, Dragon Blazers was based on Lord of the Hammer, and Lord of the Hammer was based on the prophecy. These stories are retold, changed, and Gaster was always looking for a new future, his Deltarune. Unaltered changes to Deltarune, and Deltarune changes to Undertale. Spring changes to summer, and summer changes to fall, but the prophecy is still there. So I guess that's kind of my main point. I guess.